So if you find this sleep story helpful or interesting, then give it a thumbs up, leave any comments that you've got below, and if you aren't already, subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you can receive notifications of when future sleep stories go live. I have dozens and dozens of stories already on my channel that you can go and search. I also release new stories every single week, so I hope you enjoy this story.
Okay, so as you begin to relax, you can listen to the sound of my voice. And as you listen to the sound of my voice, you can allow your eyes to close. And with your eyes closed, you can begin to drift comfortably asleep. And I don't know whether you'll drift deeper asleep to the sound of my voice or the spaces between my words. And while you listen to me talking in the background, I'm just going to tell a story. And this story is a story about a person out on a yacht, heading towards a river mouth. And as they head towards that river mouth, they can feel the salt spray as the boat pushes through the waves. They can notice the movement of that boat, hearing the motor of the boat as it travels towards that river mouth. And as that yacht enters the river mouth, so the water becomes rougher as the water flowing out from the river meets the water flowing in from the sea. And they follow that river, cutting speed down as they enter the river. And as they slowly take the boat down the river, they can notice the way the bow wave spreads out from the boat, reaches the shore, moving reeds along the shore, creating a wave passing along the banks on either side of the river. And up on the banks of the river, and up on the banks of the river, they can notice woodland, the tall trees, hear the sounds of birds. As they continue their journey along that river. And while they continue their journey along the river, so they notice how the sky is changing colour as the sun begins to set. As that sky becomes more orange and yellow, and the bird sounds begin to change as birds begin to settle down in the trees. And they continue deeper into this woodland following this river. And after some time, following this river deeper into the woodland, they notice a jetty sticking out from the riverbank, and they steer their boat over to that jetty. They cut power and let that boat carefully glide in to the shore. And as that boat glides up alongside the jetty, So they throw a rope over onto the jetty, catching on a hook, then throw another rope over, catching on another hook, and then they pull their boat in and moor their boat up, and they get off their boat, walk onto the jetty, walk to the riverbank, and a little bit along the riverbank they set up camp for the evening. They light a campfire, hearing that crackling of the campfire as the sun continues to set. They sit just inside their tent, feeling the warmth of the campfire, listening to the sound of the river as it sloshes against the bank, hearing the way the water sloshes against the underside of the boat. And they cook themselves some food. They can hear nighttime sounds of night animals in the woodland, occasionally catching glimpses of bats flying overhead as the sun fully sets and the moon rises in the sky, casting silver sparkling light across the river. And after eating some food, they settle back into the tent, and they lie down, and listening to the sound of the gentle breeze on the tent, the movement of the sides of the tent, the sounds in the woods, sounds of the river, breathing in that fresh air, they drift and float comfortably asleep. And as they drift and float comfortably asleep, so they begin to have this sense of walking through dense woodland. And as they walk through that dense woodland, they notice they have a wolf walking alongside them, the most majestic looking wolf. And as that wolf walks alongside them, so they allow their hand to fall down beside them, touching the wolf's fur, feeling that connection between the two of them, as that wolf is there guiding them through this woodland. And they notice the way the trees rustle in the breeze. They notice the solidity of each footstep they take, the sounds of cracking leaves and branches. And they push through this woodland. And as they continue pushing through this woodland, they're curious about the experience, about where this wolf is leading them. They don't feel like the wolf is doing the leading or that they're doing the leading, just that they're together on this journey. And so they continue walking deeper into the woodland. And after a while, the person begins to notice a flashing light in the distance, a light that's almost pulsating. And they walk towards that pulsating light. And the closer they get, the more they notice there's a slight humming sound with that light. And eventually they find their way to a tree that's in a very slight clearing. And this tree is taller than the other trees around. And there's what looks like a jewel in that tree that's pulsating. They run their fingers around the bark of the tree, and they touch that jewel in that tree, and it feels slightly warmer than the surroundings. And the wolf just sits down calmly, watching as the person walks around the tree, taking a good look at this tree, before coming back to that jewel. And they can see around that jewel is a faint outline of a circle, almost like someone has drawn a circle in the tree that's slightly indented. And they run their fingers around that circle and then rest the palm of their hand on that pulsating jewel. And as they do, so the tree begins to lower into the ground. The branches fold up, and almost like a lift lowering under the ground, the entire tree rumbles and starts to lower into the ground with them on it. And after the whole tree has lowered down, deep under the ground, so something seems to close above them, and they wonder whether above them it now just looks like a bit of meadow with the tree missing. And as that tree continues lowering deeper and deeper, eventually they start to notice light filtering from beneath them. And then that tree lowers all the way down, and they find themselves in what looks like a valley under the ground. They walk off from the tree across a grassy plain out into a meadow. And it looks like trees around either side, trees off in the distance, and a river flowing through this valley. And at the start of the river there seems to be a waterfall, where perhaps the water is falling from somewhere high up, maybe a surface river, and then filling this underground river with water. and they're really curious about this experience. They're looking for some answers about the experience. So they start to explore this valley. And as they explore, they see a rowboat sitting just on the shore by the river, and they decide it'll be quicker and easier to explore if they get in that rowboat and row deeper into this underground valley. And so they push that rowboat into the water, climb in, push off the side with one of the oars, and start rowing that rowboat down that river. And they follow that river deeper underground, deeper into this valley. And as they follow that river, they notice some otters in the water. They watch as those otters seem to be playing, and occasionally one will dive down and come back with an object, sometimes rolling on its back, dropping a stone onto a shell, trying to crack open that shell before being successful, eating what's in the shell, then diving down and getting some more food. And the person's curious about the otter's use of tools. As they continue down this river, and after a while the river begins to widen, and as that river widens, so that river calms. And as the river calms, it begins to open out into a lake. And they row into that lake. They row around the side of the lake, pull up on the shore, exit their boat. They can see some ruins that look incredibly ancient. And so they decide to explore these ruins. They start looking at the walls, noticing what symbols are on the ruins. And they find on one of the ruins that there are some circles drawn, a bit like the circle with that jewel in that they pressed earlier. And they took a look at those circles, rested their hands where the circles were, and the areas felt warm, but it looked like something was missing from within those circles. So they hunted around, and they could hear a distant pulsing sound. So they relaxed and focused their attention, listening out for that pulsing. They moved their heads side to side, and they followed their way to one of the pulsing sounds, where they found a jewel hidden in the undergrowth, glowing, and they picked up that glowing jewel. They could see that jewel glowing in their hands, the warmth given off by the jewel. And they took it to the ruins, to the circles. And they noticed which space seemed to fit that jewel in, and they placed the jewel in place, before following their hearing again finding their way to discovering the second jewel. And they find that second jewel, pick it up, feel the warmth of that, can almost feel it throbbing in their hand, before placing that into the space that seems to be for that jewel. And as soon as both jewels are in place, so they hear the rumble of moving stone, and they notice just the other side of this wall of ruins, the ground begins to lower at an angle, turning into steps going down. And so they walk to those steps, and just as the steps come to a halt, they begin to follow those steps down, deep underground. And as they do, they almost count themselves down those steps. 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, all the way to the bottom. And as they reach the bottom, so they light a torch, and they can hear the way their footsteps echo off the walls down here in this cave, in this underground area beneath the ruins. And so they walk deeper into this cave. And as they do so, they notice there are drawings on the walls that look like they were drawn by an ancient culture or an ancient civilization. And the drawings are very simplistic, but seem to tell a story. And as they walk deeper into this cave, they notice a stand in the middle of the cave. And on that stand is a stone tablet. And that stone tablet seems to have words carved into it. And they find that they instinctively understand those words and feel a sense of peace and calm. And they pick up that stone tablet and start to leave that cave. And as they leave that cave, they have a sense that somehow this experience is teaching them something, and that somehow what's written on that stone tablet is designed for them as much as for anyone else. And they find their way back out of that cave and continue exploring the valley for a while. And after a while, they find their way back, out of that valley, back to that tree. And back at their tree, they put their hand back in that circle. And the tree begins to rise back up out of the ground until it's back in place. And the wolf and the person find their way back through the woods. And as they find their way back through the woods, so the person in the tent drifts deeper, more relaxed asleep. And as they drift deeper, more relaxed asleep, and the woods and the wolf begin to fade, they have this sense that something about that stone tablet has significance beyond it just being in a dream. And they drift deeper asleep, almost like they're lucid dreaming, drifting deeper asleep with an awareness they're drifting deeper asleep. And they find themselves in a vineyard, and they can smell the grapes, and they notice they're barefoot. Squashing the grapes in a large barrel, stepping up and down on those grapes. They can feel those grapes being squashed beneath their feet. And they become absorbed in the process, stepping on those grapes, and then moving around the barrel a bit, making sure they get all the grapes. And after stepping on those grapes for a while, they step out of the barrel into some water, clean off their feet, put on some shoes, and then get guided by someone through the vineyard. And the person guides them through the vineyard, guiding them past grapes, all the way to their house. And they enter the house and get offered a glass of wine. They can hear the wine being poured into the glass, sound of the air travelling into the bottle, sound of that wine filling the glass. They can then move that glass beneath their nose, feeling the way the glass wants to take on a bit of movement itself as the wine circulates while they move the glass. They can notice the smell of that wine before having a sip of it and noticing the taste. And then relaxing back in a comfortable seat while the person begins to talk to them, and they continue to drink the wine. They can feel that wine in their mouth. Feel the texture, the flavours, feeling that wine as they swallow, as it moves down their throat, feeling the effects of the wine moving through their body, through to their arms, their cheeks, feeling a slight warmth in the cheeks, and then circling that feeling back, having another sip of the wine, feeling the effects in their cheeks, through their body, as they relax in that chair, while the person's talking to them. And the person's talking about a stone tablet and a message on that stone tablet. And they find this curious because they know this is a separate dream. And yet, although it seems like this dream is unconnected, the tablet's being mentioned, and it's almost as if the character in this dream knows about the tablet in the last dream, and they go with the flow. And then after listening to the person talking about the tablet and drinking the glass of wine, the person says, "Follow me." And they stand up, feeling some of the effects of that wine, feeling a warmth on the cheeks, and they follow the person through their house, to a wooden cabinet with glass doors, and the person opens the glass doors and takes out a stone tablet. And the person recognizes that stone tablet as the one from their previous dream, with the same message on it. And they find it really curious it's cropped up in two dreams like this. And they get handed that tablet, and they feel some kind of a connection, a warmth through that tablet. They can feel the weight of the tablet, and they place that tablet back, and then find that they can hear sounds of morning birds, and they find themselves drifting out of the dream and awakening by the embers of that campfire in the tent. And they pack away the tent, clear up the campfire, and set off from the riverbank down into the woods, just as the sun is rising. And while the sun rises, so the light shines through the occasional gap in the woodland, dancing around in the darkness of the woods. And they walk deeper into the woodland. And after a while, walking deeper into the woodland, smelling the natural smells of the woodland, feeling the waxy leaves, they move out the way, and the branches, they move. As they walk deeper into the woodland, so they discover the terrain becomes more uneven and rocky, and they notice they're climbing over ruins of a lost city that once stood here. And as they explore, they can't really notice anything other than the rough terrain and rocks lying around that would let them know that there was once a city here. But through exploring, they find a large slab on the ground. They move that slab and find a drop down into a tunnel. So they shine a torch down there. They lower themselves down and hang themselves down by their hands, stretching their body out. And then they let go with their hands, dropping just a foot's length to land in the tunnel. They shine the torch around. They can hear dripping water in the tunnel, echoing down the tunnel. And they start exploring this tunnel, realizing this tunnel is part of the old ruins. And in a room off of this tunnel, they find a stone tablet resting on a stand in the middle of the room. And they realize this stone tablet is identical to the one from their dreams, as if somehow this tablet and themselves are connected, and that they knew about this tablet. And they pick up the tablet, and as they do, they feel a rush of energy. They feel a connection, and they start to have almost a psychic experience with the tablet. Almost as if that tablet conveys knowledge into them. And they notice that in the back of this tablet are two crystals that are pulsating, that seem to be powering this stone tablet, creating this psychic-like experience. And the tablet reveals to them the past of what happened through the creation of the civilization here, to the end of the civilization here, and the storing of this tablet. And they realize that this tablet's teaching them something about how to survive in difficult situations and continue to grow. And make the most of what it is that you have. And they learn so much from this experience before placing that tablet back in place, the experience fading. They find their way back out. They realise they've got what they came searching for, and that what they came searching for wasn't a physical object. It was what was contained on that tablet, and the experience they had. And they knew it was all about the experience. And they found their way back down that tunnel, jumped up, grabbed on to the drop they came down, pulled themselves up out of that tunnel, replaced the stone slab, found their way back to their boat, and as the sun was setting on another day, they boarded their boat, left the mooring, and started heading in their yacht back out to sea. They travelled along the river, out of the river mouth, out to sea, and started their journey home. And as night time fell, so they dropped anchor, cooked themselves some food, relaxed on their boat eating the food, drifting with the swaying, the bobbing up and down of the boat, the movement in the waves. Before finishing their food and settling down for the night, recalling the dreams they'd had, their experience with the tablet, as they began to drift asleep, and as they began to drift comfortably asleep, they could feel the boat gently rocking them to sleep, and the silence around them, and how comfortable they felt as they drifted and floated and relaxed asleep.